Hey everybody, it's the Ring Generals podcast. I'm Nick Nenad.
I'm the RKJ man.
And I'm Eric Santos.
And what you are about to watch, no matter what, is good. Whether it be an interview, some video in LA,
Me
some
talking
other
blasphemous nonsense.
Exactly.
A lot of good shit going on.
Him interrupting me while I'm talking.
That's what I do.
Exactly. Just say it again. You're watching the Ring Generals podcast. Enjoy. No, so I think the obvious first question for any wrestling interview is how did you fall in love with wrestling? How did you get involved in wrestling in the first place? Like, how did you get to know it as a kid?
As a kid, when I was very young, like probably 3 years old, my mom and dad, they were friends with Bobby Eaton and Orville Hutto, which is the guy that got me in the business many years later. They all ran around together whenever Hutto and Bobby broke into business in 76. And so from like the time I was old enough to watch it and just understand what's going on, I loved it. So it's been a lifelong passion for me, I guess you could say.
Yeah, so in previous interviews, you talked about referee Tommy Young and how much of an influence he was in your career. Talk to me about that.
As a kid growing up, through my really younger years, of course, every kid that likes wrestling wants to be a wrestler. And I was probably around 12 years old during the Jim Crockett promotions. I watched a lot of that. And Tommy Young, just one day I was watching a match, and I don't even remember which one it was, but I kind of started paying attention to him. And at that time, I didn't know what all the role a referee had. But I could look at Tommy Young and tell that he was like a cut above everybody else, because he had the facial expressions, and he would like sell the moves, and help put the moves over, and diving over the guys and sliding to make the count. And I'm like, this guy right here, he's on his shit, and that's kind of who I started studying first as far as referees go.
Now, talk to me a little bit about your favorite matches growing up. Yeah, what was the match that you said, okay, I definitely want to be involved in the pro wrestling business?
Wow. I don't know if I could just pinpoint one particular match, because back then, living in Huntsville, Alabama, that was one of Nick Doulis's towns, and he ran every Friday night at the old Coliseum that we had there in town. So I grew up going to those shows on Friday nights, and it was guys like Tojo Yamamoto and Jackie Fargo and Lawler came through there, and pretty much everybody, that worked for Doulis at that time. That was my first taste of wrestling was there. I don't know, man. There was so many matches that I liked growing up, especially during the Crockett days in Memphis. The Lawler and Kaufman feud in '82, that was something that I was able to see and read about in the magazines, and that was one of the things that was what made me become a fan of Andy Kaufman.
Oh, wow.
And so it's just I can't just, pinpoint one thing that made me like it. It was just, everything about it was just great to me,
Yeah, no, real quick. Did you, when you were younger and when you were watching it, because you said that you kind of noticed the referee first when you were first watching wrestling. Did you believe it was real, or did you kind of get the whole kayfabe element of it quickly?
I actually, I knew it was a work, but I also was that kid in school that I loved it so much, and I was one of the ones that, because back then, I mean, it wasn't always cool to be a wrestling fan, and you were kind of an outcast or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But even at a young age, man, as a kid, I would protect the business. Like I would actually, and this is kind of it's kind of funny, but it's kind of also, I don't know, unfair to the other kids. But like when I was probably 10 or 11 years old, we would, there was a little group of us that did like wrestling, and we would make bets on the matches and stuff. And I almost always won the bets because I kind of, from an early age, I kind of knew what was going on, and and like it would be a house show, and it would be like Ric Flair defending the title against Wahoo, and all the kids would be like, "Yeah, Wahoo's gonna win. He's gonna win," and even at that age, I knew, okay, it's a house show, so the belt's not gonna change hands, so I'm about to take the money from these little kids, But
that's great.
I mean, that's the kind of things that we did. But I mean, yeah, I knew it was a work from early on, but it never changed the fact that I loved it and I loved watching it, and just I was always amazed by it.
Wow. So with that being said, in the early years, there was an interview that Jake the Snake Roberts made. He said that the best way to start in pro wrestling was becoming a referee because you get to read people, judge people, and read the crowd. With that being said, did you want to be a referee at first or become a wrestler when you first started out in the pro wrestling business?
By the time I got started, referee was the only thing I wanted to do. And because honestly, and as bad as it is to say, I really didn't think that there come an age where I realized, okay, you're not going to be able to be a wrestler, so you need to put all this concentration into being a referee. So when I started, that's all I ever wanted to do. And I remember my first night, which my first night, I never knew if there would be another one or not, but Tim Ernesto was booking the show that I was working my first night. And he asked me after my first match, he said, "So that's the first time you've ever reffed a match?" And I was like, "Yes, sir." And he said, "That's pretty good. You want to do another one?" And I said, "Yeah." So at the end of the night, he sat me down and he said, "Are you interested in training to be a wrestler too, or do you just want to be a ref?" And I said, "No, I just want to be a ref." And that very first night, he told me, he was like, "A good referee can go far in this business."
Right.
And at that point, I mean, like I said, I didn't really invest too much into what he said until later on when I started kind of taking it more serious, because, I mean, honestly, when I started at my age and everything, I never thought I would ever be out of, Mount Pleasant or whatever, working for more than 100 people or whatever. But he was right. I mean, a good referee can do stuff,
Right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Doug, I'm interested to know from you as a referee and as a fan as well, how has wrestling evolved over time?
I mean, obviously anybody that watches it now that watched it then, it's not that hard to see. I mean, looking back, for instance, like finishes of matches, you had, back in the 80s, a slingshot suplex was a finish. Tully Blanchard was the best at that. And it's like, when he hit it, you knew that was it. Same with the DDT, or even Ricky and Robert with the double drop kick. I mean, and now you go and watch matches today, and guys are just freaking almost killing themselves, man. And it's like they'll do, 40 high spots and flips and flops and kick out of Canadian destroyers and all this shit, and it's like, man, like, so yeah, it's evolved a lot since I started watching it.
So go ahead, Ryan.
Do you think that those type of high spots or whatnot are hurting the business, because you have people out there who say that, hey man, these wrestlers who do so many flips and so many high spots, you don't slow down enough to tell a story, so it hurts the overall quality of the business and the overall quality of the wrestling match?
Yeah, part of that is true as far as the speed. It's like they never slow down enough to give the crowd to react to anything that they're doing. And, I mean, that's kind of, I wouldn't say it's hurting the business, but because there's always going to be a fan of different type of wrestling. I mean, you got the guys that love deathmatch stuff, and then you got guys that like WWE, and then you got guys that like indie wrestling. I mean, so to me, it's kind of like ice cream. I mean, it's like you may like a particular brand, and they may have a lot of different flavors, and some flavors you like better than others. But I mean, I'm not going to shit on the flavors that I don't like. Just, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I've been asked a lot of times to ref like deathmatch tournaments.
Uh-huh.
And I've turned them down just because that's not my thing. Like, I just don't get it. I get it, but I don't. If that makes any sense at all. I just don't want to do those kind of matches because I don't like all the broken glass and I don't know. I've refed some death matches before that, for guys that have actually requested that I do their matches and stuff, but it's like, as far as these tournaments and stuff go, I've always tried to just stay away from that just because it's not something that I really want to do.
So, Doug, do you have any stories from being a referee on the road, whatnot? Do you have any stories maybe that you kind of remember still to this day?
One of the ones I'm sure there's hundreds that I can't remember at the time. The one I always go back to was not long after I got in the business. I was working for Tony Falk in Nashville. He ran the Stadium Inn every Friday night. And I was wrestling a match between Nick Iggy of the Carnies, which that was way before the Carnies ever evolved or even got together, but I swear I can't remember the guy's name Iggy was working, but the match was supposed to go like 7 to 8 minutes, and they started going to the finish after like about 3. And apparently on a body slam, the guy just lost everything and he shit himself. And so, like, in the middle of the match, it's like me and Iggy both smelt it at the same time, and we just kind of looked at each other. And so they went to the finish and did it and everything. We get to the back, and Iggy looks at me, and he's like, I think he shit himself. I said, I think you're right. And we didn't see the guy for like 10 more minutes, and sure enough, that's what had happened. And he went straight from the ring to the bathroom to clean up, and then he came back in. But that was I'll probably never forget that one.
Oh man, like I'm pretty sure you have like numerous of stories out there. Now I know that there's like plenty of matches out there, in the territories where they've gotten a little bit out of control. Now, was there a match in particular where it got way too out of control and it was too much for you to handle?
There was a match in Indiana, and this has been a couple of years ago, I think. There was this guy up there, and I won't even tell their names because I don't know. I think the dude retired after that night. He kept stiffing the one guy. He was like slapping him, but he was hitting him in his ear, right? And like after the first time, he got a little receipt. Well, then he did it again, and it happened like 3 times. And the guy that was getting popped in the eardrum, he got pissed and shot on this dude and literally beat the hell out of him.
Ooh.
And I'm friends with him, and I'm like literally trying to pull him off of this guy because he's just like beating the shit out of him. And I know that things are breaking down and we got to get out of there. And I'm trying to get him off of him and he won't stop. And I'm just like, that was like my first real moment that I'm like, damn, what am I going to do? I can't just let him kill this dude.
Yeah.
But,
Of course not.
like, that was pretty crazy.
That's amazing. It's almost like you turned into an MMA or UFC referee at that point in the middle of that match. You actually had to stop the match.
Yeah, like, I mean, he got the guy down, like, and pinned him, and like I was just praying that the dude didn't try to kick out because God, it would have been awful, but it was crazy. That night I've never been more ready to get out of a building before in my life.
No, that's good. So I want to transition. So we know you do a lot of the independent companies in the South, but we want to talk to you a little bit about MLW because we see MLW as one of the top wrestling promotions in the world right now. And it's awesome that we could get you on since you're involved in that company because we do want some specific questions about the company to ask you. This is an obvious one. How do you think MLW compares to, say, an AEW or WWE? Or do you kind of see it as more of an alternative?
As of now, and totally not meaning any disrespect, I would think it would be an alternative maybe, only because, obviously we're not as big as WWE or even AEW at this time, but MLW is on the BN Sports. We're on now literally all over the world. I mean, they've got this deal going with Crash in Mexico. They've got a deal going in Japan. So our first pay-per-view is November 2nd in Chicago. So I've heard people say on Twitter and Facebook and all over social media that MLW is the best thing on TV right now, which makes me feel good because I'm a part of that. And
yeah.
I think honestly MLW is growing more every month. I mean, it's just crazy. Like the exposure that they're getting all over the world now, and since I've been with them this year, I mean, they've probably done more for me this year than I've had happen to me in the past 6. So
Wow.
I can't thank MLW and Court Bauer enough for what they've done to me and given me a platform to work on a national level, and I will forever be grateful to Court and MSL and MLW and everybody involved.
So, Doug, you talked about MLW and people and how it's grown. Two people I know that have been very prominent in MLW have been Tony Schiavone and Jim Cornette. Especially Jim Cornette. Did you get to work any way? Have you gotten a chance to work with Jim Cornette? And if so, how is he behind the scenes? Because I need to know.
I have actually been working with and knowing Jim Cornette since probably at least the last 5 years. And because the first time I ever met him and started working with him was over in Nashville, like back 4 or 5 years ago at least. So, I do work with him and I'm friends with him. I don't always agree with everything he says, and I don't question that because I want to remain friends with him, and so we don't talk about that kind of stuff because I know I'm friends with people he hates, and but working with Cornette is great. Growing up, in the Crockett era and Midnight Express being my favorite tag team ever. And now, having Cornette call matches that I'm reffing or just being able to call him on the phone and ask for advice or whatever, it's kind of crazy sometimes. But yeah, Cornette's a good dude. He's just he's old school. He's gonna say what's on his mind, whether you like it or not, and I mean that's just him. You either love him or you hate him. A lot of people hate him. I happen to love the guy.
What about working with Tony Schiavone? Have you gotten any chance to speak to or interact with Tony Schiavone in MLW?
Yes. Tony Schiavone, of course, the voice of everybody's childhood. I actually was able to meet him before I started with MLW as well. So there again, having Tony Schiavone, somebody that I grew up watching on Crockett, throughout the years, and having him call some of the biggest matches ever, and now he's on MLW every week calling matches that I'm reffing. I mean, it's crazy. But Tony Schiavone is one of the funniest guys that you will meet. Like, he don't even try to be. He's just naturally funny, and it's just it's fun to hang around him and just talk to him.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm pretty sure Tony Schiavone is also another guy for us wrestling fans and for those who want to pursue wrestling, we can learn from in a way. Being a ref and being a wrestler, we can all learn from Tony Schiavone and as a broadcaster as well. Now, jumping back to the referee job, I kind of want to ask you do you have any tips to give to those who want to pursue being a referee for pro wrestling? This just goes for the ones who do want to go into pro wrestling, but they kind of want to start as a referee at first. So, are there any tips to give to people out there who want to pursue pro wrestling or being a referee for a wrestling match?
I would highly recommend going to a reputable school to be trained, because a lot of people don't believe me when I tell them, but I've never had any training at all before I had my first match. I don't recommend that. I've had people tell me that this refereeing thing is just something that came natural to me. I mean, you know, I did study Tommy Young and Earl Hebner and guys like that for years and years, and I did pick it up without having to be trained, but I don't recommend that. There's a lot of schools here in Tennessee that I would totally recommend. Dr. Tom Pritchard and Glenn Jacobs, also known as Kane.
Yeah.
They have a school in Knoxville called Jacobs Pritchard Wrestling Academy. Ricky Morton has a school in Chucks, Tennessee called School of Morton. Tried and True Pro Wrestling out of Clarksville, Tennessee also has a great school with some good trainers there. Bram is one of the trainers up there, along with Crimson. And there's a school here in Tullahoma that Kerry Awful of the Carnies runs. It's Crux Wrestling. And any part of Tennessee you're in, which I don't know about other schools, you know, like throughout the country, I know there's a lot of good ones there. But speaking for the ones in Tennessee, those are the four that I would highly recommend anybody to go to.
So I want to get back to some of the people in MLW, and there's one pretty popular dude. Popular might not be the best word to
He's
describe.
an asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is MJF Maxwell Jacob Friedman like that in any way behind the scenes, or is he just strictly like that all the time?
MJF, he's pretty much a prick all the time. Like, I mean,
Wow.
he is like the I've kind of described him as being a time traveler from like the 1980s that is here now, because he never gets out of character at all. Like, if he's out in public, he's a prick. If a fan comes up to him in public, he's going to be a prick to him. I mean, he never, you know, he never breaks that. And that is something I feel like nowadays is kind of lost in the shuffle, so to speak, because you have a lot of heels that want to be cool heels and they want to be liked. Well, in my opinion, if you're a heel, you're not supposed to be liked. You're supposed to make people not like you. And MJF, to me, is one of the best, if not the best in the business right now. And I will say that because, I mean, that's the truth. That's how I feel.
So, of course, MJF works with MLW, and he works with AEW as well. And next week is going to be one of the biggest weeks in pro wrestling history. It's going to be the start of a crazy next couple of months in 2019. I just want to get your opinion on how important these next few months, with so many wrestling promotions being on major network television, how important it is for the wrestling business.
I think it's a good thing. I mean, you know, we haven't had any really any so-called competition with WWE since the Monday Night Wars back with Nitro and Raw. So I feel like Cody and all the people at AEW, man, they've really got their stuff together, and they're coming in hot. I mean, I think this is going to be like the Monday Night Wars all over, only it's going to be on Wednesday.
So we have a couple questions left for you. Some of these are a little ridiculous, but so I know you wanted to ask this. You're tired. You mentioned something on Twitter. Why don't you ask it?
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Doug, I'm from the South too. Okay, I'm from North Carolina. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. Okay, so I'm familiar with cockroaches, Dad, but I heard that you're afraid of hissing cockroaches. Okay, it terrifies you. Now I did some research, and it's in Madagascar. They're in Madagascar. So talk to me about this. How did you get afraid of hissing cockroaches? Because I've never seen a hissing cockroach.
Okay, look. Cassio Kid, has his podcast, Cassio's Cut.
Uh-huh.
And once a month, he'll have people send stuff into his post office box, whatever they want to send. And once a month, he'll do an episode where he opens all the packages on YouTube, and that's that week's episode. And the last episode he did, I was taking him some of my stuff over there. I was going to, deliver it to him because it's cheaper to drive to his house than it is to mail it because I live like an hour away from him. So, originally he was supposed to record the day after I was bringing my stuff, but then something happened and he had to record that day. So, it was kind of just impromptu that I was going to be a part of this episode. And one of the boxes that he opened that somebody had mailed into the post office box was these two big, huge Madagascar hissing cockroaches.
Oh my God! All right, I think that had to be MJF.
And
that is so ridiculous. Damn.
And see, the thing is, it's like I told him, I said, okay, everybody knows that his wife, Big Booty Cutie, she likes these exotic animals, right? She's got like a bearded dragon and a tarantula and a python and all this, right? So I told Cassio, I said, now it's like we don't know if they sent you these cockroaches because they don't like you or if they sent them to you because they know there's going to be some pets for you now. So it's like we don't know if this was like a rib or if it was like legit. So, but I will tell you this, he does have 2 new pets now because he had them a little house made before I left there that night. So, but yeah, those damn things, man. I had never seen. The only time I had ever seen a cockroach that big was in the zoo, and it was crazy.
Doug, I've lived in the ghetto before. I've seen some big cockroaches.
Same for me, yeah.
The people that sent them, they sent them from New Jersey, so I thought, well, hell, they might have just found them on the damn street or something and picked them up.
Like, the thing about those cockroaches is they were in that box for like 3 weeks, and we opened it up, and they're still alive, and there's nothing in there but just shreds of paper. And I'm like, what the hell is going on?
I kind of want to talk about how, we're in the West Coast here in California, and there is a promotion called Bar Wrestling. Now that Rick Knox is with AEW, he's one of the longtime referees for some of the indie shows, and now he's going to AEW. As a referee, will we see you in a promotion like Bar Wrestling here in the West Coast, here in Los Angeles, in the future?
Man, I would literally love to come out to California and be a part of Bar Wrestling, or PWG or any of those fights. I mean, I'm happy at MLW, but I'm still going everywhere else I can go, and it would be great to get out to California. Yeah, that definitely is something that I would like to do.
That's awesome. Well, we would welcome you with open arms. Some of those shows here in LA are amazing.
Crazy,
I
too.
think some of the best wrestling in the world, to be honest.
One question, as something I noticed on a recent episode, I saw you put on your Twitter that the wrestlers got so angry about losing the match they actually were beating you up.
There again, that goes back to those injustice guys. The bad thing about that was they actually won the match, and still beat the shit out of me. It was Myron Reed, Jordan Oliver, and Cotto Brazil. Apparently, there was brass knuckles involved that Myron got hit with that I didn't see, but they still won the match, and he was arguing with me about the brass knuckles that I didn't see, and I'm trying to explain it to him, and the next thing I know, out of the corner of my eye, I see Cotto coming at me, and he hits me with a huge forearm shot, and then all three of them just started stomping me. And Jordan Oliver even stole my shoe. First time ever in my whole career I've ever had my damn shoe stolen. And he did it. So, I mean, they're always complaining about, referees being biased against them and everything. But I don't know, man. I think they're the ones with the problem. But I can't say too much because I don't want them to beat the hell out of me.
Yeah, I feel bad about even releasing this part of the interview.
Yeah.
So it might, the next episode of MLW might be pretty brutal.
Use that as a promo for the next episode of MLW, man.
No, we've seen Jordan Oliver wrestle in bar wrestling at least once, and he's one of the more disliked guys that come out to the crowd. People genuinely don't like him. So I can understand why he would be that kind of character in MLW as well.
I will say this though about all three of those guys. Putting aside the fact that they treat me like crap all the time and all that, but all three of those guys, Myron Reed, Jordan Oliver, and Cotto Brazil, they are all three like top-notch talent.
Yeah, no, it's that, and I think that goes back to you saying that MLW is, in your opinion, one of the best wrestling companies in the world. We see some of the talent that's there, and it is amazing. That even with companies like WWE and AEW and the independent scene being hot, MLW still has legitimate star power under its hip.
And I will say this, their slogan or whatever catchphrase is the world of MLW never stops. And that is true because Kornbauer is always like trying to find ways to make MLW better. He's always bringing in new talent. MLW to me, and I may get heat for saying this, but I've heard people say it on Twitter, and I've seen it all over, the internet. MLW, I think, now is probably at the level of Ring of Honor or maybe even have surpassed them as far as viewers go.
Yeah, I mean, I would corroborate that with you too.
Yeah,
I don't really see any Ring of Honor content that much come across my Twitter feed, and I follow a lot of wrestling content, and I only really see. And this was before we kind of got connected with you because you retweet a lot of MLW stuff, so it helps me follow it. But I don't see a lot of Ring of Honor talent or just videos and stuff as much as MLW or some of these other companies.
And that's another good thing about MLW. They have one hell of a social media team that constantly, even sure who all is involved in MLW's social media. I would love to be able to put them all over, but they do one hell of a job.
What we have to ask everybody that we have on the interview, what are your future aspirations? Do you have any aspirations to go to a WWE or go to an AEW, or are you fine staying with a company like MLW and on the independent scene?
Obviously, my ultimate goal is to be able to do nothing but make a living in the wrestling business, as hard as that is nowadays. While I am happy being with MLW because they have done so much for me, obviously, if I ever got the opportunity to talk to AEW or, in any capacity, I guess what I'm trying to say, if I'm ever offered anything from them, then that's kind of a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think at my age that Vince is looking for anybody to bring in at my age as a ref, because I've heard that once you go there, you pretty much forget everything you've ever learned, and they retrain you the way they want you trained.
Mm-hmm.
So that, looking at it realistically, I think that's probably out of my grasp, but AEW is definitely on my radar, and I hope that in some small form or fashion that I'm on theirs too.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I know Court Bauer is allowing Tony Schiavone to work with AEW. He's also allowing MJF to work with AEW. Will we see a working relationship in the future between MLW and AEW?
I can't answer that fully, but I can say this, that I hope that is the case. That would be, I feel like that would be good for both promotions, actually. But you know how the business is, and that remains to be seen. But, you never know what's going on behind the scenes. Some of the stuff that, is posted from MLW on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, that's the first time I'm hearing about it, because I just I'm happy doing what I'm doing, and I show up to work when I'm supposed to be there, and I do what I'm told, and I'm happy doing that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So, thank you so much, Doug, for doing the interview.
Absolutely.
We don't really
Yes.
have any more questions left for you, so we're just kind of going to give you the floor, kind of say your social media and all that stuff and what you want people to know about you.
Okay, social media, if you want to follow me on Twitter, it is at Doug Markham 123. Instagram is the same thing, Doug Markham 123. And on Facebook, just type in Doug Markham. It's my personal page, but I use it for 95% wrestling. My T-shirts, if anybody's interested in that, they are over at whatforapparel.com/D Markham. I have 5 different T-shirt designs right now, from sizes small to 5X. Going to be adding more later. I have a very talented artist from Canada, Doug Halliday, working on some stuff for me as we speak. The fanny packs and the little lapel pins, if anybody's interested in them, just send me a DM, and I have those in hand, and I can ship those to you personally. But other than that, I guess that's about it.
That's perfect. I can attest to you. Your Twitter is a great follow because if you want to know about MLW, you try to retweet as much as you possibly can.
That's true.
And you're also a big fan of the business too. You're always commenting on stuff that's going on, whether it's WWE or AEW or obviously MLW as well. So I love following you on Twitter. It's fun.
Thank you, man. That means a lot to me.
Good stuff, man.
Absolutely.
It's the sauce, Alex Zayne, and you're watching the Ring General Podcast. Turn this man around. Turn this man around. Subscribe, like, and comment.
But raise a glass in the sky and salute the ring generals.
That's right. That's right.